A very good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America on Monday, January 26th, 2015. And this is Live Talk. I'm Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Kip Stube.
And tonight on Live Talk, we are going to talk about the Zambian presidential election and what lessons Zimbabwe can draw from our northern borders.
To join the discussion, phone us directly at this number 001-202-619-2077 and we'll call you back.
And of course, Live Talk goes out to Zimbabwe on our 909 medium wave frequency and on the 4930, 5940 and 15455 kilohertz shortwave, Monday through Friday at 8:30 p.m.
On the internet, you can find us at www.voazimbabwe.com, www.voashona.com, and www.voindebele.com.
The bottom line is that we all want our country to move forward and to banish squalor and poverty in our midst. Only one of us could end up as president and have that singular honor and privilege. I'm humbled eternally and indebted to you all, my fellow citizens.
On behalf of the people of the Southern Africa Development Community, SADC, allow me to extend our warm congratulations to the newly elected president and to all the people of Zambia on their victory in the January 2015 presidential by-election. The maturity exhibited by all stakeholders in this electoral process is a source of pride for SADC and for the rest of Africa. This historic occasion marks the beginning of a new political leadership in Zambia.
Muchivhota kuZambia zvavanoita ndezvekuti vanoti chiya chinonzi vota through gwaro revavhoti hachisi chinhu chainge chakawandiswa. Vese vaiongorora sarudzo idzodzo vaikwanisa kupuhwa gwaro iroro pachine nguva. Vese zvematongerwo enyika vakapuhwawo gwaro iroro pachine nguva. Chechipiri, gwaro iroro raishandiswa pakuvhota igwaro raiva nemufananidzo wemuvhoti. Saka zvavaiita ndezvekuti pakuvhota paya munhu aiti akapinda mupolling station kuzovhota vaideedzerwa kunzi mingi uya azopinda mupolling station muno ID number yake yakamira yakati.
Monani iqiniso lene lokuthi Zambia ingcelelane lathi njalo seduze kangako izenza ukuthi abantu bananzele ukuthi hayi kathi vele kubangwani njalo kuze kube nini kuthiwa nxa kusezombusazwe ngaso sonke isikhathi kufanele kulwiwe.
Once again, thanks for joining us, and this is Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are going to talk about the Zambian presidential by-elections and what lessons Zimbabwe can draw from those elections.
Zambians elected ruling party stalwart Edgar Lungu, the next president, to replace the late Michael Sata, who died in October last year. Mr. Lungu, a former defense and justice minister, won 48.3% of the votes cast, according to the Southern African Countries Electoral Commission.
Mr. Lungu won the tight race with around 27,000 votes, one of the narrowest wins in the country's electoral history. He polled 807,925 votes, while his main rival, Hakainde Hichilema of the opposition United Party for National Development, received 780,168 votes. The Electoral Commission said, and counting took longer than planned because voting was interrupted by heavy rains. And of course, Mr. Achilema is accusing Mr. Lungu of having, and I quote, stolen the election and called him an illegitimate president. Gibbs.
What do you think about this issue? If you wish to join the show right now, phone us directly at this number 001-202-619-2077 and we'll call you back. That number again, 001-202-619-2077. kunjalo ke mfowethu.
onguka amadzadiwa nhasi toda kuti tinge tichitarisa gibbs nenyaya yesarudzo dzekuzambia dzakaitwa idzo dzikakundwa navalungu asi tiri kunzwa ikoko kwangu nemashoko ekuti pane vamwe vanopikisa vanotsigira vahaichilema vakakundwa vaimba vachiti havasi kuda kuti vamugabe vanga vari munyika iyoyi nekuti vamugabe vanenge vari kunzi nevamwe vanga vakurumidzisa kuenda kuzambia ikokoko pasati pabuda zvanga zvichiitika musarudzo nekudaro toda kunzwa kuti zvakafamba sei musarudzo imomo uye kuti chii chingadzidzwe nezimbabwe gibbs musarudzo idzodzi dzekuzambia.
Yebo kambe ke Zulu kandaba siyetemba ukuthi selizwile ukuthi uhambe njani khona ngale ke eZambia. iZambia phela liyazi kakhulu yayile slogan sayo esithi one Zambia one nation. Siyakwazi ukuthi kwesinye isikhathi ke yake yaba ingxenye ye-Rhodesia kube sokubuya ke leNyasaland. Siyakwazi ukuthi ke kwakule federation ngaleso sikhathi. Siyakwazi njalo blessing ukuthi abantu beZimbabwe balobudlelwane obumangalisayo labantu beZambia. Kuqasa kudala sibili. Ngakhumbula sibili ukuthi abantu abanengi abavele eZambia basebenza emgodini wange. Kodwa namhlanje okumqoka siqoqa ke ngokhetho olwenziwe khonapho ke eZambia. Usenzwa kunjalo ke uEdward Lungu ngani nguyozibamba esidukwini ngoba uthole ukuthi abe ngumongameli walelo lizwe. Kube kubuya ke uHakakinde ungazani akusamhambe ilanga kuhle uyichilema lapha. Siyakwazi ukuthi United Party for National Development ibizama sibili ukuthi incithisane la ke uLungu le party yakhe ePatriotic Front kodwa kwehlula 27,000 votes ezenza ukuthi bayihlukane khonapho nxa sikhangela ukuthi bavotelwe njani. Funa ukuzwa ngani ke bantu beZimbabwe ukuthi kambe libona ngazani ke ukhetho lolu lungabe lulesitshengiso bani kwele Zimbabwe lilubone njani njalo libona ngazani kungafundwani ngalolu khetho. Asithobe mfowethu.
Of course, let's not forget that there were 11 candidates, presidential candidates in this by-election. Of course, like we said earlier on, Mr. Lungu won that election. And let's go to Lusaka, Zambia. There's Solomon Bobosi Bunu, who is a field officer for the Zimbabwe Election Support Network. Mr. Bunu, good evening.
How are you, Blessing?
We are doing great, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invite.
Now, what is your take on these elections? We understand you spent almost a month in Zambia monitoring the situation there.
Thank you very much, Blessing, for the invitation and for the interview. The Zambian election is an interesting election, especially looking at our own elections in Zimbabwe. The first thing is we have to look at the processes that the Commission undertakes, and then the duties that is mandated to the Commission, and the powers that the Commission does have, and how it then dispose of each duties vis-a-vis our own situations. And then we also look at the regional instruments that are there in terms of elections. So when we are looking at the Commission itself, it's very professional. The information and the stakeholders are all engaged at all times. We were abreast with all the information, everything that was taking place. We were abreast with that information at all times. And then I think the funding as well, part of the funding to the Commission, it's actually one of the things that made the Commission to do its own work and make sure that it's very independent, though there are complaints all the time after every election that the elections were rigged, this and that. But then from our own analysis of the situation, the Commission did its work very well. They worked under tight schedules. It was only 2 months to prepare for the election. They obviously, because it's rain season in Zambia, there are problems with the rain. The roads are not good. Obviously, we know most of these African countries, the road network is bad, communication infrastructure is bad, but the Commission managed to, because they were supposed to release the results in 72 hours according to the law. But then they at least stretched a bit, but that was not really bad. And for us, we commend them for a good job.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bunu. Please do stay on the line. For those of you who are just joining us tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about the presidential by-elections in Zambia. Of course, Edgar Lungu won that election, and he effectively becomes the president, replacing the late King Cobra, that is Michael Sata, who died in October.
Now, what is very clear is that Kaunda's party, KK,
yes,
Kaunda's party is not doing well. In this election, I think it was number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it just got about 9,737 votes. So compare that to 807,000. I mean, there's something that is happening in his party. And then there's another party called the Greens.
Yes.
How many votes did they get?
1,410.
1,410 votes. This is exciting. Yeah, this is very exciting. So, but Mr. Bono, what lessons can be learned from the Zambian experience? What's your takeaway there?
It's like for us now, we have to look at so many issues that we have. Number one is the issue of the preparations for the election. Number two is what powers do we give to our own electoral commission so that it can dispose of its own duties. The influence of the states, the influence of the security sector in our own country. Here from the day one that I landed in Zambia, I have never heard of any officer, any security personnel interfering with the electoral process, interfering with campaigns, interfering with voting in any way. The only sector that you could hear about is the police. They are who are engaged on election day to maintain peace and order. And then the Air Force of Zambia as well, which is engaged to transport ballot papers from those far-flung areas. Some of the bridges were wiped away. The roads are too bad, so we couldn't even. Our monitors had actually difficulty getting the information from there, but we managed. But then for the commission, they might not follow our same, because they have to be procedural. So they have to be procedural and follow the same dictates. They have to use Zambian Air Force to transport materials to the polling station, then get also those materials from those polling stations. So that's at that level only where you can hear interference, rather than where you have this interference in campaigns, solidarity with parties, solidarity with candidates from the even sector. So that's very worrisome for our own situation in Zimbabwe, which I think we could also learn one or two from them. And then the commission itself needs to be strong. You don't need a commission that would go forth and come back, go forth and come back. You need a commission that is straightforward and very professional, and whoever wins the election should be declared the winner of the election, despite the noise that other people would make. That's basically the baseline there.
Thank you so much. I think we have our second guest. That is Mr. Newton Sibanda, news editor, Zambia Daily Mail. Mr. Sibanda, good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to your program.
The pleasure is ours. Now, Mr. Sibanda, we are talking about the Zambian elections and the takeaways for Zimbabwe. But let's not forget that the main opposition candidate there, Mr. Hichilema, is complaining that Mr. Lungu is an illegitimate president. What is your take on how this election was conducted?
I think this election has helped to further enhance Zambia's democratic credentials. This is an election that has been widely lauded as a very free and fair election. Of course, Mr. Hichilema has his concerns, and the election itself was too close to call. The competition was very stiff, very narrow margin, and naturally it's very painful for a loser when you lose by that tight margin. And knowing where Mr. Hichilema came from, he had been performing dismally all along. This was almost like his opportunity. But he cites other technical, if he says there was technical manipulation of the vote, it's a bit difficult for ordinary people to tell. But generally, it seems this election was very free and fair. And the playing field was very level now, especially that the PF candidate from the ruling party did not have access to public resources, as is usually the case. Because if you recall or know, in the run-up to the election, the ruling party was divided. The acting president was seen not to support the candidate, and therefore he did not accord the candidate the access to public resources. So Edgar Lungu won using support from ordinary members, well-wishers, And it's believed that he was riding on the legacy of Michael Sata and the sympathy. It was more of a sympathy vote.
Let's talk about the media. You are in the media business yourself. In Zimbabwe, there are always problems in that there are complaints that the public media does not give access to opposition parties. And, of course, the ruling party also complains that the independent media is also skewed against the government. Can you give us your assessment of the media environment just before the elections were held?
I think this was a big achievement. I've been in the Zambia Daily Mail for 20 years, and I've seen how the public media has covered political players in the election. In 2011, it was worse. The ruling MMD was only covering the opposition only when the news was negative. But now in this election, we've seen my newspaper was giving coverage to the opposition. On the opposition for the first time in many years was coming on front page, and sometimes would run pictures of the ruling party and pictures of the opposition addressing their rallies. So the voters were given an opportunity to get the messages of the candidates. If the opposition was not on front page, at least it would be on a lead story on page 2 or page 3. And all opposition, small and big, were given a voice. This never used to happen. In 2011, the ruling MMD went all the way to simply almost annihilate the opposition political parties, using the media to discredit Michael Sata because he was the main contender. But this did not happen this time. Of course, there are complaints. For example, the public broadcaster covered all political parties, but of course, it didn't show pictures of the opposition, especially of Hichilema. They could show him speaking, but not showing the crowd. Because showing the crowd would be saying this, telling the people the numbers that are attending. Yeah. But there was an attempt.
I like that. You don't show
where we have come from. This is a very, very big achievement.
Lord, thank you, Mr. Smata. Please do stay on the line.
So it's a way of manipulating the minds of the people, right? So show his face.
Yes.
But
not the crowd.
Not the crowd. Very interesting.
Rikatienda kuna mtereri ude kutanga vamsareva vari kubotswana. Makadiva msareva? Aiwa isu tiri nani. Muri kuona sei zviri kubuda kuZambia nezvatingadzidzewo semaonerei?
Varume munotirangidze ndimi. Ida muchititeera riva ko. Imugati muchitiudzira kuti maelection akabirwa maakutiudza kuti maelection ari right. Anogoita right sei chichetinodzidza paZambia. Zambia yakaita zvinhu zvokubirira zviri pachena zvokuti we don't want to learn anything from Zambia. It's more than worse than what we experience in Zimbabwe.
Mune humbo vacho here vamusareva?
Yes, because our president was invited immediately when he landed in our country. Before the vote counted even started, who was he going to inaugurate?
Was he invited or vakaenda vega?
Vaida kudodini ivo vanga vari kuti vanga vasina kana kudaidzwa kana kudii. Because he went there actually with the mission of inaugurating somebody who is in a competition of 11 candidates. Zokuti where the voters row has got the pictures, has got whatever. That's deception in Africa. They deceive people about that. Free and fair, whatever they say. But those elections, whatever they are conducted, they are not free and fair. It has been even simply seen with the visit of the president of Zimbabwe going there to inaugurate somebody who is stealing the rest. And this one, I don't know why are people talking about your way fair and credible and to talk about the voters registration. It doesn't matter. That one is a way of reading. I should think even at school, teachers should have to stop teaching about voting as a right of somebody. But when they want to teach, let them teach as a right for somebody to be deceived.
aiwa tinotenda zvikuru vamusareva nekupinda muchirongwa chedu.
Haiwa apa patoda kutaurira chokwadi tingobudira pachera hapana zviri papa hapana zviripo.
Aiwa tinotenda zvikuru mukoma wangu.
Ndatenda baba.
Of course Mr. Msareva is saying there's nothing to learn.
Yeah.
You heard him. He says the election was rigged.
Mr. Bunu, your reaction to that? Your immediate reaction.
Yes, I'm listening. Ndikuzwa zvangu zvavari kutaura asi munoona mukoma blessing. Nevamwe sari mustudio election charinonetsera ndechekuti patinoenda kuelection tese tine maideas edu, tine maperceptions, tine maexpectations edu. But probably not everyone's expectation would be met by that election. But we are saying we cannot do the same thing in Zimbabwe. We need to improve. So that's why we say we need to learn something from Zambia. If they manage to send a helicopter to Chama, Chama North and Chama South, to get some ballot papers and stuff from there, so that at least they can deliver the election. For us, what do we do? Are we doing the same thing? Do we need to learn something from there? Last year they were using the cards for observers. They were using a blank without your face. Now they've improved. They've gone a step further by including your badge. What are we learning from there? What are we? International observers, you get a list of voters per province, per district, per constituency, then per ward, and in a polling station, a particular polling station. You get that as you are accredited. For us, do we get access to that? So we need to learn. Those are the lessons that we need to take. That could be part of their own business. This party, they've got their solidarity items that they do. That's PF in Zimbabwe and PF in Zambia. They might invite each other. Come, brother, we are going to celebrate. Whatever they've made for their own arrangement, it's their own arrangement. But for us, we are concerned about if they had not delivered the election as it was supposed to deliver, then we were going to have issues with them. But they respected the vote of the people, because when we deployed observers and monitors on the ground, there was a sample that was done by this organization, CCMG. They did a sample of the polling stations. The results were within the margins, because now this was supposed to verify the official results that was going to be announced by the ECZ, the Electoral Commission of Zambia. And then basically the results fell within the margins. And then for us, it's not a concern. We need to deal with certain issues. Pre-election issues need to be dealt with in pre-election time. But for this particular election, on election day, everything went on well according to the procedures, according to the rules, according to the standards that are expected of any election. Those who couldn't vote on election day because it was raining, because the materials were delivered late, they were afforded the opportunity to vote. Were they coerced to go and vote? No. Those are the things that we need to learn. If we are coercing our own people back home to go and vote, we are saying no to that. Let's learn to give people the freedom. Say, go and elect the leader of your choice, and then after that, we count your vote. If how we voted is what we get from the results, then that's it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bunu. For those of you who are just joining us tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about the Zambia presidential election runoff, or rather by-election, which saw Edgar Lungu being elected president and replacing the late Michael Sata, King Cobra, they called him. Gibbs.
Yeah, Baba Spandas, penduke kwe khona phoke sithaya ngesintu ukuthi abakhona abakhulumayo bathi ababoni ukhetho lolu luhambe kahle. Ngakho ke ungangcono ukuthi abantu bangakhulumi lokuthi ukhetho lolu luhanjiswe kahle. Njalo nxa ungagcizelela futhi ukhuluma ukuthi abantu abangenelisiyo ukubala lokubhala bebencediswa njani. Those two issues, baba.
Okay, ngathi we realize that the electoral process still needs a lot of work to be done to refine it. Kodwa ke into esithabisayo ngakhulu ngokuthi we can tell that the Electoral Commission of Zambia has reached a level of independence and professionalism which is quite unique in the region. This is what Zimbabwe must learn from Zambia. The Electoral Commission in Zambia is quite independent, it's quite professional, and the way we run our elections were run here, there was no violence either perpetrated by the state or individuals or political parties. So really, Zimbabwe can learn something that we can get to this level. Electoral management, still there are challenges. This election was held in a very difficult period, rainy season, in a very vast country, 753,000 square kilometers, a big chunk of it not accessible rainy season. All means of logistics were used. Amabhaloti ahambiswa ngenqola ngemoto. Where it was difficult, basebenzisa ama-indiza machine, ama-helicopter. Where the helicopters couldn't reach, they put them on ox carts. Bazihambisa ngezikotshikazi. Which means the Electoral Commission has tried by all means to make sure that every eligible voter is not disenfranchised. And the voters, will was respected. Kodwa ke ukuthi laba bangakwazi ukubala balokho kanjani angila clear. I really don't know, but I think there's always a way in which they are assisted to vote. Not assisted in a way to manipulate their vote, no, but given the information on how they should vote.
Hayi siyakuzwa kakhulu ke Sibanda ungayikatshana ubambe khonapho ucingo sithathe umlaleli uMadawu oseBotswana. Madawu ungawutshona njani?
Okay. Hayi ngitholile wabatshona njani?
Sitholile kakhulu sibili lapha sikhuluma ke ngokhetho lweZambia. Ungathi ke ulubone njani mama ukhetho lolu?
Ukhetho lweZambia lolu mina ngibona ukuthi ukhetho olulungileyo kakhulu. Okokuthi alwatha lathi eZimbabwe wathiwa senza ngale indlela eyenzakale eZambia. Njengoba mina kathesi ngiseBotswana. Ukhetho olwenzakale eBotswana ngapha lalo behlukile kakhulu kulalo lwenzakale eZimbabwe. Akula kwethuselana, akula kuthini, akula kuchayana. Bayamemeza laba bamemeza ukuthi vote khathesi izithipha lezithipha imhlobo lemhlobo. Ngawuzwa ukuthi igqoka leso uyagqoka awula muntu okubuzayo ukuthi ubugqoke njani kodwa eZimbabwe uyabugqoka usesaba lolo leZambia lalo ndibone lungani lukhetho olukhululekileyo okokuthi abantu abethuselani into nje ukuthi kumele uzikhethele okufunayo wena okusemoyeni wakho ungayithuselwa ngomunye ukuthi ebese sithi hayi ngingavotela ubani engeke ngiza ngithi inhlanyelo sengiza ngithi ukuthi uvota ngokuthi uvotela ukuthi uzanyithwa lokho
kodwa ke eZimbabwe ubona ngani kuzafikwa khonapho yini kumbe siyazikhulumela nje?
Hayi mina ngibona ngani lapha ukuzikhulumela nje kuphela kodwa hayi kodwa kuphela mina ngibona ngani kuzafika
Kawuse kutheni Madawu?
Ngoba lokho befunda mbijana nje yabona ukuthi kathesi lokho lweZimbabwe babengani bafuna ukuthi abafuni ukuchaya abantu ukuthi amanye amazwe abona ngani abafuni ukuchaya abantu kodwa abantu babelokwesaba labo lokho bekhangele ukuthi kwamanye amazwe benza so babe lokho bekopa mbijana omunye ozangena esikhundleni uzagcina selungisela bona ama-next door makhelwane.
Uyichaya kuhle sibili indaba yethu kakhulu Madawu sibongile ungasikhohlwa phela ukuthi uphenduke futhi.
Ngibongile nami liphinde futhi kwelinye ilanga.
Hayi siza kuphinda mama sibongile kakhulu. So according to Madawu, you know the Zambian election was very free and fair according to her. And then she says a similar thing occurred in Botswana, you know. They actually conducted their own election and she believes those elections were free and fair. And she adds that there was no violence in the two elections, there was no intimidation, and many t-shirts were donned by anyone. Like you can wear a t-shirt of your choice, unlike in Zimbabwe. But she hopes Zimbabwe will learn something from this.
That's very true. Hanzi kugara nakaona dzivamwe vachingamire rambai zvenyu muri parunhare mwemuteereri wedu Mr. Bunu and Mr. Sibanda, please do stay on the line. We'll take a very short break. But for our radio listeners, please know we are streaming live. So go to www.voazimbabwe.com and press on Live Talk. This is Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Kip Stewart saying stay tuned to Zimbabwe.
for those of you who are just joining us, good evening. And this is Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about the Zambian presidential by-elections that were won by a ruling party candidate, that is Edgar Lungu. What we are discussing today is what Zimbabwe can actually take away from those elections. Gibbs.
If you wish to join the show right now, phone us directly at this number, 001-202-619-2077, and we'll call you back. That number again, 001-202-619-2077. You can also send us a message on WhatsApp. Our number is 1-202-465-0318. Ye, kasiqhubeka mfowethu.
Tine mumwe muteereri wedu rekaitange taenda kwaari vakachingami makadii
tinosimba makadii yenyu.
Aiwa, isu tiri nani. Muri kuonawo sei zviri kubuda kusarudzo dzekuzambia uye zvii zvatingadzidzawo?
Sarudzo dzakaitwa kuno kuzambia isarudzo yekuti semazimbabwenzi tine zvatakaonawo zvimwe zvinodzidzikawo pairi, kusanganisira like makampeniro avaita mumarodhi wehevha kuti nomata ipati ipi vanhu vainga vakaisa masitika emapati avo vanoda kumamotoka avo vakasangana murodhi vachitowevhana. Hapana zvekuisa matanda murodhi, zvokubvunzana makadhi tinosapota pati ipi kana kuti sei. Kana zvakange zviriko zvaive zviriko serudzi rwedu vatema kunawo maprovinsi, but paground zvinhu zvaiyemurikawo chaizvo kuti dai zvichiitwawo kunyika yekwedu, vanhu vachipfeka matisheti avanodawo ipati anoda, vanamai vachimunira mazambia panguva dzavo dzavanoda. Hapana zvokufungirana, hapana zvokuteerana kudzimba kuti no iwe ndakuona wakamonera zambia repati yanhingi. But anenge aruzawo panowanikawo zvinotaurikawo apo nepapo. But seso mazimbabwe tinoshuva tinonzi takadzidza sitereki, but ndasvika panguva dzekumakambeni toita mwe tina kupfuura nekuchikoro kunotoita kuteerana kudzimba tichivo vana.
Imi muri kupi kwacho kuzambia?
Ndiri kuno kusouthern province kunoku kusiyabhonga side kunoku kunovape pati yava akainde kunyanya.
Saka kwanga kusina zvemhirizhonga zvazvichifamba zvakanaka?
Zvanga zvichifamba zvakanaka because ndakatombofamba nomwe vakomana vangu tichomboenda kunovaonawo zvavanoitawo mukati muvatonga zvavaitawo vachisapotawo hakainde. But kwakauya vemwe pati vaingotambirawo zvakadarowo pati vachizivawo munhu wavo vanodawo pati pasina zvokuchererana madene zvitsiga murodhi kuti vauya kuno pakudzokera chavarova vanochavadi kwanga kusina paground zvazvakangonaka. So zvinova zvinhu zvatinoshuvawo dai kuri kwedu kunyika zvichiitika saizvozvo kuti munhu anoita sitika yemoti yepati chake anoda pamotikari hapana unoipwanyana kuti kudii, unoonaka. So ipapo chete pandakayemurawo mafambiro vakaita sarudzo dzavo.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru vakachingami nekupinda muchirongwa chedu.
Alright, nenu ndatenda zvikuru.
Tinotenda zvikuru.
Pfunyirawo so machipasa messages.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru.
All right.
Of course, what Mr. Kachingami is saying is that he was very happy that there was an absence of violence, something that he says is a big problem in Zimbabwe. So he's saying that if only Zimbabweans could learn from the Zambians that you can hold elections without machetes, that will actually help.
Mr. Bunu, what's your reaction on that? And you can add on to the fact that we saw that in 2013, Zimbabwe's illiteracy rate actually went up, as there were some people who were aided to vote, for candidates of their choice. Now, can you give us an insight of what you saw in Zambia?
Okay, so for us now, as we were doing our own work, I think I would like to add to the point that he raised, especially the issue of tolerance. For me, I have never met anyone who asked even for my ID, neither for my passport nor for anything. I've been interacting, going to this location, going to the remotest of all the provinces and coming back. No problem, no checkpoint, no one blocking even these vehicles. You are free to move. You are free to attend any rally, just record whatever is going on and come back. So that is one of the most important things that we also need to learn, just in culture, that we need to just appreciate that the other person doesn't see the same thing that I see. Then coming back to the issue that he was also raising, I think there is an issue whereby if the commission is not strong, like the individuals that are working for the commission, if they are not strong, probably because of the allegiance, appointments, etc., automatically everything else that we are talking about today will not be possible. Now the commission was very clear. It actually mentioned all the parties that have been in government, and even when they tried to say, can you reform the law so that you give the commission more powers to even bite, all the candidates who should accept results once their party agents sign. Because in almost 98% of all the polling stations and polling streams, the party agents signed the results to say this is a true reflection of whatever transpired at this polling station. So there was no need for anyone now to come and say, okay, the results are not true. Yeah, losers will always find a way of trying to come on board and try to egg this and that. But at this point, when 99% have signed to the results, automatically it means they are agreeing to whatever took place at their particular polling station. So it's one of the things that we should also learn. Parties should field their own candidates. And then on the issue of the assisted voters, once you have fielded your own party agents at each and every polling station, it's easier for you to identify those problems like assisted voters, someone who is going to be assisted and they are very literate. You see a headmaster being assisted by their own students. So it's very, like, you find it's very absurd. In this case in Zambia, we had 17,313 who, 17,313 were actually rejected ballots. And then for now, I don't have the statistics of the assisted, but it's not much. You can see the number. It's like 17,000 out of a total of 1,671,000. It's not really a big number, as opposed to our own numbers that we had in the last election. It's really bad. It's because we are not able to tolerate each other, to say this particular person supports this particular party and I don't support their idea. I will just go and vote and then my vote will be counted. And that's why I can then say, okay, we are leading, rather than chasing after someone with a market. Yeah, they used to, they fear each other, especially those ones with the pangas. They call them the pangas here. So those things are actually things for the uncivilized ones. We need to be more civilized. We need to tolerate each other. We need to understand that we cannot be the same all the time, especially in Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bunu. Do stay on the line. Regatiende kune mwe mtereri vabanjikira makadi.
Ndofara kuruwa makadi.
Aiwa tiripo muri kuona sei zviri kubuda kubva kuZambia.
Zviri zvekuzambia nevalese zvekuzambia. Ini ndinokwati zvizotamandira ndozviita ndekatinyangodzidza ndechekuti maelections ekuzambia anenge akafamba zvakanaka, hatina nyaya dzakawanda dzeviolence. Anoti zvekatinyangodzidza unowo munyika medu muzimbabwe kuti tikakwanisa kuronga chaizvozvo maelections edu anogona kufambawo zvakanaka, anenge achidziwawo achibvuma kuti wadziwa asi pasina zvekuti tinge tanetsananetsana. Ndokungatoti chikuru chatinogona kuwana ichocho pamaelections ekuzambia.
Ko chii chinokonzera kuti muZimbabwe kana poitwa sarudzo dzinenge dziri dzetsvimbo mugodzi?
Ipapapo chikonzero chogona kuti shaiwa tinenge ingori nyaya yengova pauhangiri inenge ine vamwe vanhu misguided element, but otherwise nyaya yezambia inotifanira kutiisa kuti maneighbor data watogona kuti dzechikuru ipapo zvinhu zvongofanira kubvunwa zvinenge zviripo panguva iyoyo.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru vamadyira nekupinda muchirongwa chedu.
Maita basa zitereki nekutifonera, maita basa.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru. I think Mr. Majigira, like most of our callers, is emphasizing on the need for a violence-free election in Zimbabwe. He's saying that that is what he admires most about the elections held in Zambia, that people are not being killed.
Mr. Spanda, do you have any advice for Zimbabweans in terms of conducting free and fair elections without any violence, you know?
I think the violent-free election is cardinal to the credibility of any election. The Zambian case, as we have seen, there were pockets of violence, but not so serious violence. Even up to now, we have had no cases of people that have or fatalities resulting from electoral violence. The only fatalities recorded so far, I think about two emanating from people that were engaged in celebrating the electoral victory. I mean, up to now, people from different, the two major parties, they meet and joke about the election result, you know. Of course, the election, something that came out of this election a bit worrying was the voting pattern brought out the regional a trend of regionalism, where the country could almost be split into two. You know, Edgar's support coming from the mid of Lusaka to the north and east, and Hakainde's support coming from the south, west, northwest, and a bit of central. But this is not institutionalized kind of division. It's coming from people that have either one side thinking that they've been marginalized in terms of access to leadership. And this is Edgar has a lot of work to do to try and reunite this country and build it on the motto that Kaunda left of One Zambia, One Nation. But in terms of electoral violence, it was really very minimal pockets that happened. No people killing each other because of, no people being coerced. The situation we always read about in Zimbabwe, people in the rural areas being victimized, or militias going into the rural areas to beat those that are perceived to be pro-opposition. So really, having an election where there's no violence and people are not intimidated is really cardinal.
Thank you so much. Of course, for those of you who are just joining us tonight on Studio 7 Live Talk, we are talking about the Zambia presidential election. Of course, it was won by Edgar Lungu to replace the late Michael Sata, who died last year in October. And of course, I think most of our callers, Gibbs, the issue of violence is what concerns them most. They are saying they want election. An election is not a war.
Exactly.
You know? The war was fought during the first, second, and second Chimurenga wars. And obviously now people should just vote in peace.
I think one of the principles of the liberation struggle, Mr. Blessing Zulu, was the one man, one vote kind of principle.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
And maybe that has not occurred in Zimbabwe, but we hope one day maybe it's going to happen. Now, we've got some messages on Facebook, and one of the messages is from Mr. Charles Mutukwa, who writes, "The strong men are back. Democracy in Africa has stalled. Here in Zimbabwe, we are stuck with this regime." Then I've got Mokwena Daniels, who writes, "The new leader can bring a better vision and development which his predecessor failed to bring. He can also, with the help of the opposition, bring investors to create jobs in Zambia." Then we've got Chabuda Hama, who writes, "That is a good development in Zambia. What we want is change, not only one ruler until death. Zambians, thumbs up, congratulations for your 6th active president." Encouraging messages there.
That's very true. Of course, that Lungu becomes the 6th president. Do you remember the others?
Yes.
There was
Kenneth Kaunda,
obviously.
Yes.
There was
Chiluba.
There was Banda. There was Mwanawasa and Sata.
Yes. Exactly, yes. So now coming back to you, perhaps, Mr. Punu, in terms of the turnout, we see that actually it was only 32.36%. Does this reflect the views of Zambians? Because only 1,671 people voted, and there are 1,671 voted, and there are 5,166 voters in Zambia who are registered. So does this make sense to you?
Okay, so the number doesn't make sense because everyone is supposed to go out and vote on election day. But if they choose not to go for whatever reason, then it's something else. The main thing, the cardinal thing, is for the commission to allow each and every citizen the opportunity to vote. If they decide to stay at home, then it's their own business. But if the commission gives you the go-ahead to go and vote and say, okay, the polling station is open, the materials are there, the election staff are there, everything is ready for you, then you don't pitch, then it's your own business. But in this case, there were multiple issues that were there. It was because of the timing, number one. It's the rain season. I was also in Lusaka for the better part of the day. It was raining. So automatically, some people would say, okay, I'll stay home, I'll go late until the polling station closes. So it's also the nature of the timing of the election, which was also going to make it difficult. And then on that point, again, we have to give thumbs up to the commission. They could have said, okay, we cannot do the election in January. Let's put the election to what? To May. And then the political parties would then say, okay, you are now violating the same constitution. So for them, it was a good job, but then it was up to the political parties to go and mobilize all their party supporters to come out and vote. And the commission was also supposed to do voter education, and civic organizations were supposed to come in and do much in terms of the voter education, which maybe probably because of the timing now, it was going to be difficult for all the stakeholders to work on that. But actually, it reflects on those ones who actually participated. The 1,671, 662, plus the 17,313, I think the result reflects their will.
And there were coalitions, Mr. Sibanda, that were formed, including, I think, Mr. Banda supporting Mr. Lungu. Did it help you win the election, since it was this razor thin margin?
I think if it did, the margin was very small, but maybe it helped to spoil HH's opportunities. Because HH is Hakainde Chilema of the United Party for National Development. He needed to get a few more votes outside his stronghold. And the Eastern Province was the make or break. So Rupia Banda hails from the Eastern Province. Well, he was ousted when there was so much discontent about his government, but he comes from Eastern and he still has a bit of support in that region. So the little support he had, he was able to tilt it towards Eddie Kalungu. So in that sense, it disadvantaged the United Party for National Development.
Talking about the candidates, you are bringing this regionalism. You have Mr. Lungu, obviously hailing from the north, born in Ndola. Then you are talking about Rupia Banda, the former president, hailing from, of course, the Eastern Province. Don't you think there is need for a debate so that ordinary people can at least appreciate or understand the policies that the candidates will be running on, as opposed to just voting them because, this one is my homeboy? Is there need for say something like a presidential debate? How bad is this regionalism in Zambia?
Well, just a point of correction. Edgar comes from the east, but born and raised on the Copper Belt. So he's inculturated as mostly a Copper Belt person. But the east and the north have joined hands. Then, yes, the debates would really help so that the voters can choose the candidates based on merit, other than this idea that this is my homeboy or my home girl, And there is need to really educate people on the need to break these regional barriers.
Thank you.
And maybe still with you there, Mr. Sibanda. We know that Zambians will start soon preparing for the next presidential election. So at the end of the day, don't you think that this is a burden to Zambians in terms of funds? Where is Zambia getting all this money? People are not employed. A lot of people are jobless. Where are they getting the money from,
For the election?
Yeah, for these elections. Now they conducted these elections. The next ones are there in 20 months' time. So where's the money coming from?
Well, I think the budget for this election was about 55 million, and the bulk of it was provided by the cooperating partners. And there was a very small proportion that came from the government. So we believe that the cooperating partners will still be willing to support the electoral process because they are really interested in seeing the democracy grow in Zambia and get deep-rooted, because they see Zambia as a model of democracy in the region, because you see Zambia has changed Since independence, we have had 6 presidents, and there's been a very smooth transfer of power. Every time we change power, no president has stayed forever. So they see Zambia really as a shining example of democracy, and they would want to continue supporting the electoral process.
And Mr. Bunu, are you surprised that
Mr.
Lungu, for example, has dropped Guy Scott?
Okay, so in terms of the funding now, I think that's where we have a challenge as well. We need to learn to trust people and institutions as well. Because now we are running, I think, at one of the reports that I was getting just from Zimbabwe there, is we are running like our own electoral commission is still owing people for the 2013 elections. As of last year, I had some people complaining we're not paid, this was not paid for. So that type of thing now, it needs to be a thing of the past. Why should the government get it alone when it is probably failing to give its own citizens their bonuses for the year that has just ended? So it's also good to incorporate these cooperating partners into because they bring in experience in terms of the ICTs, the best practice internationally. They also second human resources to assist you, which is a good thing about Zambia. I think even their voters roll, everything else. It was also part of the assistance that would be coming from outside, not to say the government will get it alone. It's not possible for the government to get it alone, because most of them, they are concerned about service delivery, which they are failing to deliver. Now we want to run an election, but people doesn't have water. What is going to happen? They will not vote for you. So basically, it's like we become selfish and keep ourselves in our own corners. We don't engage with these multilateral organizations to provide us with funding, which makes it difficult for the commission to then operate, because they don't have anything. They cannot run a by-election with a zero budget. They cannot run a national election with a half budget of what is expected. So they need to be given their money, and they need to pay their service providers, not to say after the election everyone is on the neck of the commission to say, you owe us money, just like we hear the stories in Zimbabwe. So it's really bad when we don't work in good faith with these partners. We engage them in health, in the Ministry of Health engages them to fund HIV projects. Why don't we engage them to fund elections? Because health is a right, elections are a right. So basically we should balance those things.
Thank you so much. Mr. Sibanda, coming back to you, are you surprised at all that Mr. Lungu has dropped Mr. Guy Scott, who was the acting president? Of course, their friction at one time, Guy Scott actually tried to fire him as the Secretary General of the party. Are you surprised by the latest developments?
No, it's not really surprising at all. I think it was something that was expected. Yeah, because of the acrimony that was in the PF, the intra-party wrangles. The PF was almost split into 2 political parties, and the Guy Scott was seen to have been on the other side, and so even if they eventually came to terms, I think the president still holds that Guy Scott had worked against him.
Still with you, Mr. Sibanda. Let's talk about the influence of Zimbabwe on the outcome of the elections. There's some Zimbabweans who are saying, no, let's be honest here. The president left for Zambia before the results were announced and was going for an inauguration. So now many people are saying maybe Zimbabwe could have influenced the outcome of the polls. So now they are basing this most probably on the relations between the Patriotic Front and the ZANU-PF. What is your take on that?
Yeah, it's really difficult to ascertain. I've heard such sentiments, but of course I know that ever since the PF came to power, the late Isata was very close to Mugabe. So when he died, Mugabe was almost the chief mourner. And when Edgar was looking for support, he ran to Zimbabwe, and of course people raised concerns about why he was going to Zimbabwe. And of course people think that Mugabe is now playing a patriarchal role over Zambian leadership. But whether really Zimbabwe could have played a role is difficult to say, or maybe it's just inter-party, what you call the relationship between the ZANU-PF and the PF in Zambia.
So
what you can call solidarity.
Is that the reason why some people were chanting Mugabe must go? And who were those people actually?
I could have missed it, but I think then if people were chanting Mugabe must go, definitely they are the people, the UPND supporters, because they knew that Mugabe was supporting Edgar Lungu.
Thank you very much, Blessing.
Todzoka kwamuri vaBhunu tataura nyaya dzakawanda dzekuti Zimbabwe ingadzidzawo chii, asi pamuri kufamba imo muZambia mune zvizvarwa zveZimbabwe zvirimo zvakawanda here, zvakamira sei?
Varimo maZimbabweans akawanda, ende mukutaura navo unonzwa kuti vakasununguka kunge vari kuno vachiona election yekuno ichiitwa than kunge uchivainvita kuti ko patinoitawo yedu munodii kuuya movhotawo nesu tovhota pamwe chete. Unoona kuti zvinovaomera kuti vagozowana mhinduro kuna izvozvo. Unonzwa kuti tange magadzirisa zvinhu ikoko tozouya. Saka zvinoda kuti pane zvinoda kugadziriswa, pane zvavanoona kuno zvinoda kuti zvigadziriswe kumba kuti vagozokwanisa kuya zoita kuzovhotawo nesu. Ndizvozvo zvatinongonzwa vachingotaura nguva dzekuti hatisati takuuya kuzovhota kumba bhukuruza hapana hazvina zvazvinoreva. Kana ndikavhota vhoti yangu haina chainoreva. Saka zvinotoda kuti kana isu tichinge taane mamekanisms ekuti vhoti yemunhu ine zvainoreva, then ava vari kuno ava vanogona kuti regedza tiende kuZimbabwe tinovhota. Nokuti zvizvarwa zvemuZambia, zvizvarwa zvekuMalawi unozoona zvichibva kunyika kwavari ikoko unoona vachiuya kuZambia kuzovhota, nekuti vanokoshesa election, vanoziva kuti election ravo rine meaning muupenyu hwavo. Asi now for maZimbabweans anenge ari kuno kunoona kuti adzokere kuZimbabwe anokuziva kuti kunongoita $20 kuti ndiuye kuZimbabwe, ndinenge ndinayo, asi kuti ndiuye kuzovhota shuwa ikoko iyo vhoti yachina isina zvainoreva hazvikwanisiki. Zviri nani ndigare zvangu nokuti hazvina zvazvinondibatsira.
Of course, what Mr. Bhunu is talking about is democratic electoralism. That is what is happening in Zimbabwe now. Elections are just a ritual, but already you know the outcome of that election. So if there are these allegations of rigging, people will simply not even bother to go and vote because they say the outcome is already known. And like you say, why should I waste my $20 to go to Zimbabwe when I know the result already?
Mr. Spanda, when you look at Zambian elections, is it easy to predict which party is going to win?
Oh yes, this one was a bit difficult, but in the previous elections, it was really easy to tell which party, especially when it is almost like a revolution. When Sata won, it was a revolution. When Chiluba won, it was a revolution. But this one, it was too close to call, so it was a bit difficult to tell which party was going to win. Well, the PF had the advantage of incumbents. Then the UPND was seemingly gaining ground, and and then there was that division in the ruling party, so which the UPND could capitalize on.
And maybe your last word, Mr. Bhunu, about what you observed in Zambia. You were there for almost a month. Did you have free access?
Sure, free access to everything, the Electoral Commission, free access to various communities, and also even to the electoral process. Accreditation is not something that is restricted by application or by invitation. You just bring your application there, you are accredited. Straight away you get access to certain information which is critical for you to comment on the process. So at times we then get worried when people say this election was free and fair, but they were not given access to certain documents and certain information which is critical for you to say the election was free and fair. So basically that's all we want. We would say here they don't stretch the people's patience. You don't stretch it too much by making long queues. They make it very easy for people to vote. You get into a polling station, it's easier for you to identify your polling stream. You get into your polling stream, you vote, and you leave.
Thank you, Mr. Bhunu.
To the stakeholders all the time.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, time is not on our side, but we want to thank our guests this evening. Solomon Bobosi Bhunu is a field officer for the Zimbabwe Election Support Network. He was in Zambia for a month, and we also had Mr. Newton Sibanda, news editor, Zambia Daily Mail. And we want to thank all our listeners and those who sent messages to us, and of course our team behind the scenes. Signing off, this is yours truly, Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Kip Stube. Good night, Zimbabwe.